Thank you for joining us. It's now the interview section of InfoWars Nightly News, and we're joined by investigative journalist, former NSA officer, Navy veteran, Wayne Madsen. And I like to introduce Wayne this way because I always get a chuckle out of it. Watching C-SPAN, if there's some important national security meeting going on, or even some arcane thing happening, you'll see him in the first or second row scribbling notes. And he has just broken so many stories on this show over the years. He has traveled all over the world, Libya when it's being bombed, and Indonesia investigating the birth certificate. You name it, he does it. And I remember seeing some evidence to this when it happened, the Giffords shooting with the Tucson event. But now he's gotten some really interesting information that integrates into Fast and Furious and why they wanted to kill the judge and Giffords, but the judge was the real target. And the headline is, the CIA cannot survive without its drug running and child trafficking. And if you're a new viewer, it's on record, DynCorp, Halliburton, the CIA have giant white slavery running rings. And people always email me saying, what about black slaves? Folks, white slavery means sex slavery if you're a new viewer or publicly educated like I was, and including children. So there's a real race to the bottom in corruption where even people involved in moderate corruption can't blow the whistle on the worst stuff in the world because they will be compromised as well. So that this is why tyranny tends to accelerate, as we're now seeing here in America with the National Defense Authorization Act, secret arrest of citizens, torture is great, drones, tracking ranchers is wonderful. It's because tyranny is here. And joining us with the inside intel is Wayne Madsen of WayneMadsenReport.com. Wayne, from the National Press Club, there in their media center. Wayne, break it down, and thank you for sharing this with us.
Well, I have been in touch with a person that I've known for a few years now who has been a confidential informant for both the FBI and the Drug Enforcement Administration. And he contacted me recently to let me know that he was actually in communication, in meetings with Judge Roll and Congresswoman Giffords in 2009 about the tremendous amount of weapons that were going across the Arizona-Mexico border, and specifically in an area that had been under the personal protection of then Governor Janet Napolitano, and that protection for the zone continued after Napolitano became the Homeland Security Secretary under Obama. There were so many weapons available in that zone that he knew about an individual who found a new AK-47 in a wash. And went to the authorities, federal authorities, said, hey, I found this AK-47. They said, there's so many out there, we know, why don't you just keep it? But it's clear that just like we saw under with the Iran-Contra situation, we're back into it. The target this time isn't Nicaragua. The target is Mexico, and it's to destabilize Mexico. So these weapons were going to Los Zetas and the Sinaloa cartel so they can have at each other, chop off a few heads of some journalists, nosy journalists, which they've done, and other people, politicians. I mean, the Interior Minister of Mexico went down in a crash. That's still unexplained. Took out his entire entourage. But we know that Hillary Clinton has said in the past that she foresees the possibility of U.S. troops being deployed to Mexico. And I think this is just how this thing's going to play out. We're going to just inundate the country with weapons. The drugs are coming out of there to feed the coffers of the CIA, just like the drugs. I mean, I remember being in email communication with Gary Webb, who they destroyed his journalistic career because he wrote about the influx of drugs into Los Angeles, courtesy of the Central Intelligence Agency. But nothing has changed. And obviously, Giffords, Judge Roll, and a third person was mentioned to me, a Republican who represents West Texas, specifically the Midland area. Mike Conaway was also interested in investigating this whole operation, and apparently he's so fearful of his life right now, he's not even talking to anybody.
Well, let's expand on that. From my own deep research, everything you're saying fits we know that Arizona was the main conduit. We know sheriffs in West Texas and New Mexico and Arizona were involved as conduits as well, and many have gone to prison. We know that it wasn't just gun shops allowed to sell the guns, that it was 18-wheelers into Mexico. We know it was a destabilization operation to keep drug prices up, but to also blame the Second Amendment, and CBS has now gotten those emails. But Sully Castile, who is still in federal prison, no criminal record, Vietnam veteran, DEA agent, he came on my show 6 years ago and he said, in Arizona, in New Mexico, in South Texas, they're training Los Zetas who were trained at Fort Benning, Georgia. They tried to hire me, he said. And again, this was when none of this was even happening yet. And I knew he was a credible guy. He worked with Gary Webb, one of his main sources on that Pulitzer Prize, but still it was shocking. He said they're going to elect Calderon. This is a year before. There's going to be a total implosion. There's going to be a giant war, and the CIA's funding the major cartels to kill each other, to jack up prices. Then that'll be used for a North American merger. Now all of this is public. Now, he likes to sell his book at gun shows, Powder Burn. It's out of print now. They kept begging him, sell us a shotgun, just like Randy Weaver. He sells a shotgun to what turns out to be an informant, legally, a private sale, needed some money. He's a school teacher at the time, selling off some of his gun collection. They bust him, sent him to prison, and told him, you should have shut up about this, but he gets out sometime next year. But the issue here is, this is going on. And you look at the whole shooter, what was witnessed by others, clearly it's some kind of hit. And we now know there were investigations from county reports in Arizona by different state officials and federal. So this fits into it. I mean, this is so big now that Fast and Furious has come out that it was a false flag on the domestic front. And your source reaching out to you. I mean, this is big news, Wayne. Give us any other tidbits you can and where you see all of this going.
You know, the source actually met Judge Roll and Congresswoman Giffords in 2009 at a restaurant in North Phoenix. And, the question is, why is a federal judge, the chief judge for the District of Arizona, and a congresswoman, why are they working together? And what I gather is this, as you say, this is such an enormous problem in Arizona and the other border states. Why wouldn't a U.S. judge who obviously was very concerned about what's going on there be working with Giffords, by the way, was and she was carrying on a huge investigation of the drug and weapons smuggling. So she was
documented. She was a pro-Second Amendment Democrat, something that the Democrats don't like. Okay, Wayne, your Skype was breaking up a bit as you join us via your iPhone. Love the Star Trek technology. But continue. How big an issue is this? You were getting to the point that Judge Roll was meeting at restaurants with people, clearly showing that he knew people above him were compromised, and he was trying to do investigations himself, kind of like the MF Global thing. Now we're the head of the big commodities group. Told Congress, hey, I've already gone to the Justice Department. Corzine knows where the money is. Actually, he spilt his guts. He had a prepared testimony that he put out so the mafia wouldn't kill him, going along with the lie. But once he got in front of the cameras, he spilt his guts. I mean, it's the same thing. Please continue.
Well, I think the fact is we had a Republican-appointed federal judge, Judge Roll, working with a Democratic Congresswoman, Giffords, and a Republican who represents Midland, Texas, which is, by the way, that's George H.W. Bush's old hometown. So the mere fact is that these individuals must have known this is such an endemic problem. They decided to, throw caution to the wind. Who cares about the separation between the legislative and judicial branch? Let's do what's best for the country. However, Judge Roll paid with his life, and Congresswoman Giffords has been incapacitated very severely. I mean, the message was received, I believe, and there are special air corridors that are known to these smugglers where they fly through these corridors over the border at night, and there's special drop zones and special landing strips that are cleared in advance where they drop the drugs and in some cases pick up the weapons. But the weapons are clearly, now we know with Fast and Furious, just going across the border en masse to destabilize the situation in Mexico, and it's been very successful. I've talked to people from Mexico. There is a state of fear in that country. I mean, the mere fact that we see bloggers being beheaded, people trying to get the truth out. Hillary Clinton saying there may be a need to send troops there, but we have our troops committed in Afghanistan and other countries, but we don't even have them in the country to our south.
Well, Wayne, the magnitude of this, that you've talked to a federal informant known to you, and this information integrates with everything I've got, and that Judge Roll was hit, Giffords was hit but survived. This other Texas person is hiding out. It's admitted that all these other people have gone to jail. I mean, how can they have it where MF Global steals billions publicly and doesn't get in trouble, and the head of the Justice Department, who we know was involved in Oklahoma City, Holder, is publicly caught lying and says, well, he didn't mean to lie, the intent matters. And even the New York Times reports a year after you and I did that, okay, the Justice Department was shipping drugs in, not just guns out. It is Iran-Contra Part 3 or 4. I mean, it is a repeat, but now it's all, they're caught red-handed and no one gets in trouble. Why were they so scared of Roll and Giffords? They knew that they had government credibility and could bring them down.
They knew too much, and of course this guy, Jared Loughner, is just like all the rest of these programmed assassins, you know, Hinckley, Bremer, Squeaky from assassins or attempted assassins. We go back through Sirhan, of course.
All right, Wayne, three's the charm. We got you on the phone here in seconds. The Skype cut out again from your iPhone, so now we're going via the phone. Right when you pointed out Sirhan, his lawyers, LAPD have admitted it wasn't his gun, mind control. From when I read and talked to some of the eyewitnesses, that guy was just the cutout shooting a gun. There were other shooters. What does your informant say about this?
Well, this guy Loughner, I think it's important. It's been reported already that Loughner, of course, has been declared mentally incapacitated to stand trial at the present time. He's now in a federal psychiatric facility in Missouri, and there was a report that he's actually being administered psychotropic drugs in his Kool-Aid, okay? So here we have the Kool-Aid, shades of Jonestown, and I forget which, it was either, I think, Salon or Slate, one of those online publications reported this. So it's not from the National Enquirer or the Globe or anything. It's a legitimate source. But here we have the shooter, and it looks like he's just going to be consigned to the federal loony bin, and we'll never really know what happened with him. But clearly, he showed all the signs of these other programmed assassins we talked about, or attempted assassins. And I think it's important to note too that Eric Holder is being defended now by a member of the Judiciary Committee, Hank Johnson from Georgia. Hank Johnson, by the way, is the individual who beat Cynthia McKinney and got a lot of money in his campaign from people like Herman Cain. And Hank Johnson is the same guy who said if we put too many troops on the island of Guam, the island will capsize. So clearly he's not wrapped too tight. But we have him now as the number one defender of Eric Holder, saying it's okay for the Justice Department to investigate itself on Fast and Furious.
Well, Wayne, is this informant fearing for their life? You know, I've interviewed a few people you put me in touch with and end up dead, namely the D.C. madam. She was on hold one day on an interview trying to tell me stuff, and I said, listen, honey, don't tell me anything that you don't say on air. You better go public if you've got all these names and stuff. And then they ended up obviously killing her, and, you know, you were trying to help her out and warning her. And I talked to her landlord, or the condo manager. She owned the condo, and she said, oh, she was a great lady. Everything was prepaid. She was being followed. She was hiding stuff from her mother's. He sent me her lease agreement and letters. The letter wasn't even in the same hand. Not even a handwriting expert, you know, could figure this out. It was a totally different hand. Just amazing that this is going on. Are you worried? Is your informant worried? I mean, if this Texas politician's worried, this is big news. I mean, we know there's that weapons conduit right there. And we know Napolitano's a gangster. We know Holder's a gangster. We know that Holder said a month ago, don't investigate Fast and Furious. Bush was involved pre-Obama, which is true. This is an ongoing program.